everybody. Sally Alada here, and I with the awesome Doc List. Doc, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Awesome. I want to ask you about a recent engagement that you were at that I just heard was very, very fulfilling for you. And I heard it has something to do with transforming an HR team to Agile. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it wasn't actually transforming a team to Agile, rather it was creating a team to introduce Agile into an HR organization. So this organization said, we think Agile might benefit us in HR, and it was actually a visionary head of the HR department, which I love. Let's put together a team to try this out. And I said—
So actually try Agile practices within HR.
Within HR and recursively to improve HR processes, which we want to have an Agile aspect.
Very cool.
And it was specifically to streamline their hiring process.
So what was the vision? Yeah, what was the team's vision?
The vision was, there was two. There was the vision of the project, which is we want to reduce the time it takes to bring a person on, to recruit and hire someone, at least by half.
Wow, cool.
And it was really the goal that the team came up with ultimately was one-day hiring.
I saw the flyer that they had one-day hire process.
Yes.
That's pretty ambitious.
It was, but doable.
Wow.
So the other vision was, can we work this way within HR consistently, which was an amazing vision, because this particular organization, as is true with so many, have very, very filled calendars. They have relatively low true collaboration. They have a certain amount of territoriality and control. And so the head of HR and the Agile sponsor, because there was an Agile sponsor and a recruitment sponsor, the Agile sponsor very much supporting this idea of how do we work within HR in an Agile fashion.
Love it.
So last year, when I was working with them initially, they said, we're going to put together a team. And I said, please don't just grab people who are available, but rather craft a team. Identify people who will work well together, who have complementary skills, but mostly will work well together. They spent 4 or 5 months identifying the right people to put on this team.
Good for you. I actually love that you nudged them that way and you didn't just say, oh, let's just find the most available, because you said that was the success factor.
Oh,
that
huge,
they
yeah.
picked the right people.
And I wouldn't say I nudged them. I would say I took a baseball bat and smacked them in the back of the head and said, craft a team.
Craft a team.
Because you're going to set yourself up for failure if you just pick random people. Now, the people they picked, interestingly enough, were someone who was a senior director and took on the Scrum Master role.
Wow.
Yeah, she
Really?
was fabulous. They brought in someone who has worked in a variety of roles and was coming out of what they refer to as the brands. So this is, can I say who it is?
We'd rather not.
Okay, so there are
It's a major retail organization.
Yes, so they brought in someone who had been at one of the brand names into core HR to be the product owner. She'd never been in anything like a product owner role before. They brought in a woman who had been in another of their brands in a marketing role, had never been in HR. And then 2 other women. So there are 5 women on this team who came from these diverse areas, who'd never done Agile. Only 2 of them had been through the training we did last year. And we formed this team out of whole cloth.
So how was it for you coaching a team on Agile, but it's not a software development team? So you had to obviously be very flexible, which I know you are. I'm curious for your experience, and I'm curious for their experience as you're kind of dealing with this very ambiguous, it's not, you can't kind of take and say, well, this is the recipe and this is how you should do it, because we're not talking about testing, we're not talking about development. I mean, none of that applies here. It's truly business, Agile. Tell me a little bit about that.
So we started out with, if you will, sort of the default cookbook, right? Here's how we do things, daily stand-ups and planning and iterations. And we quickly discovered that, for instance, the iterative model wasn't suiting them well, because a lot of what they were doing initially was more like spikes. And so rather than saying, well, we'll take 2 days to do this, we created a Kanban wall. We said, we need to be able to adapt to what's coming up. We don't know how long these things are going to take. We don't know how to estimate them because we don't know what they are yet. They did everything from We're going to do same-day background checks, because what they have today is a 7-day background check, which happens after they make the offer, which means they now have made someone an offer, and there's a 7-day delay minimum to get them on board. They said, how about if we do the background check on the same day that we do interviews? But they didn't know anything about that going into it. They hadn't come up with this vision of one-day hire initially. So we had to say, how does this play here? How do we define the roles? Are we going to say that the Scrum Master cannot be a participant when she's one of the experts? Because she is one of the SMEs. So we modified that. We modified the product owner role to a certain extent, partially because she lives in the Southeast and the client is in the Northwest. Right? So there were all sorts of little things that we had to adjust, and as we went, I kept saying, this is up to you. I will tell you how it's done elsewhere, I'll tell you how it's done in software development, but we have to figure this out.
This is going to be a little different here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to be cookie cutter.
No, hardly. And part of my philosophy with every team is you have to own it. I will guide you, I will give you my insight and my experience, but ultimately you have to own it. And so over and over and over again, they'd say, how should we do this? And I said, well, I don't know either. So let's talk about this and let's figure out what will work here, not just in HR, but in HR at this organization, and of course HR versus IT.
That's excellent. A lot of people ask me and say, you know, we want to use Agile, but we heard Agile is only for software development, Agile is only for this, Agile doesn't work in this. And you know, what's your advice for people out there? And we work with different organizations, not just HR, but there's sales, there's marketing. We just did a strategy session for a nonprofit major, actually we've been talking about it, but they basically, they feed the hungry children, and they wanted to start using Agile. What's your recommendation and advice for leaders out there that want to take the principles of Agile and kind of apply them to a non-IT environment?
Right. So I'm going to look at them now because I want to talk to them.
Definitely, I want
you to look at them.
This is for you.
So there's nothing in Agile that is about software development. None of the values, none of the principles, and none of the practices are specific to software development. Pick any of the ones you want, even test-driven development, which sounds like it's a highly technical, very specific practice, can be done in any environment. Pairing, all the ceremonies, daily stand-ups and planning and everything else can be done in any environment. The idea is much more about the mindset, how we think about the work we do as much as the work we do. It's far more the mindset than any of the specific practices. If you look at the history of how Agile came to be, most of the practices came out of a variety of environments. I have yet to rediscover the reference, but the first time I ever heard about daily stand-ups was a reference to Andrew Carnegie in the 1920s, getting together with the people he was working with, standing up every day to talk about what they were doing. So none of this is new, and I argue none of it is specific to software development, and we've demonstrated that just recently.
I think when I walked into that team's room and I met with them, because I actually interviewed them and kind of said, how's it been going for you guys, you know, HR team doing Agile? The level of excitement, energy, it was just so clear to me. And we've obviously used Agile within the claims department and in a healthcare insurance company. But the level of excitement that they had to finally be able to collaborate, visualize what they're going to get done, have some concrete goals, measure against those goals, have daily stand-up meetings. None of that they looked at it and they said, this is just common sense. We're just applying a lot more rigor, visibility, and collaboration to our work. So
I have one other thing I want to add is I had one-on-one conversations with each of the members of the team after they'd been together for a couple of weeks. And one of them said to me, already, this is amazing.
Yes.
She said, I don't know how I'll ever be able to go back
I heard her say
and work on another team that's not, especially not doing this, but even just this, because this team came together so fast, so powerfully. But that impact of that way of working was so strong, so early.
She doesn't want to go back.
No, she said she couldn't.
Yeah. I think if companies really begin to learn how to do this, it will give them a competitive edge that no other company has in terms of their business growth. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I appreciate it.